Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Foria YouTube channel. Today we have a thrilling and very, very epic interview with one of my personal favorite people in the world, epic herbalist, regenerative teacher. There's so many names that so many accolades I want to sing your praises for, but I'm going to let you introduce yourself, the wonderful, amazing, magical Marysia Miernowska. And if for those of you that don't know me, I'm Kiana Reeves. I'm Foria's Chief Education Officer. I'm a somatic sex educator, a teacher of embodiment and intimacy. And we're going to dive deep into some really interesting topics today around sustainability, around plant medicine, around what it means to be in relationship with nature, maybe even about witches, and about the original formula of Awaken, which Marysia helped us create and is the mastermind behind. So, Marysia, I'd love if you could introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you, Kiana, and so wonderful to be here with everybody. Yes, I am an herbalist. I am the director of the School of the Sacred Wild, where I teach herbalism and plant spirit medicine and regenerative earth care. And I'm the formulator of Foria and a formulator. I love creating lots of magic with plants. And I consult also for regenerative farms, helping people regenerate and heal the earth. And I think I would say that my whole mission is about facilitating the falling in love between people and the earth and helping us receive the bounty of nature and all her healing gifts and helping us be agents of healing for the earth and care for our beautiful earth mama.
Yeah, you do such a good job at it. You're very
Thank
on
you.
mission from
Thanks,
where I
sister.
sit. Yeah. So I would love to know, because we have a community of people that are very excited to support the earth, support the environment, to who want to buy all natural formulas, who care about what they put in their body. And I'm imagining, well, maybe it's not true, but I'm imagining like your life wasn't always like this. Like this wasn't always your path. And I would love to hear how you found your way to being a teacher in this way, to being a beacon and a voice in the communities for regenerative agriculture, for herbalism, and really for the reverence of the earth and the plants that you work with.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that actually growing up in Poland and having my great grandmother and my grandmother teach me about plants and tell me to talk to the plants, and them growing food and making food and from their gardens. I think that I actually did get a really strong imprint of just working directly with nature
Yeah,
and going directly to the earth. But because herbalism isn't really like a thing that people talk about in Poland, and especially folk herbalism, it's like probably all of us, all of our listeners have had a grandmother, a great grandmother who have actually had a really strong connection to the earth and who have known local plants and local medicines and local folk ways of healing. And that kind of tradition, which we call the wise woman tradition of healing, is often invisible. It's one where people aren't wearing like a white suit or touting a degree. It's just really kind of the ancestral and traditional ways of knowing the earth and knowing place. And so I had a strong imprint of that, but I didn't have, I don't think, the intellectual understanding of what it was. And moving to the US, going into architecture, entering a very kind of, it's a very patriarchal career, architecture, and a rather unhealthy lifestyle, at least it used to be
mm,
25 years ago. And so that really burned me out. And there were a whole other kind of bunch of things due to modern life that led me to have some digestive issues and adrenal fatigue and a lot of inflammation and things that Western medicine has a really hard time diagnosing. And it's actually like in Western medicine, it's not weird to feel constantly tired or have to go
totally.
for sugar or caffeine.
Totally. Yeah.
Inflammation isn't like, seen as like, oh, this is a sign that your body's telling you that something's not okay. So I started kind of looking for alternative medicines and ways of healing myself and actually found myself quite disappointed by a lot of alternative medicine. A lot of alternative medicine, was very unaffordable, hard to have access to, a lot of conflicting information, and sometimes there can be this message in some alternative medicine fields that kind of tell you that, like, if you're sick, it's your fault, and it's
Mhm.
because you're dirty and because you need a detox. And so there's this whole kind of power dynamic that actually doesn't support deep regenerative soulful healing, and often can actually cause even more depletion and despair. And so I kind of was stumbling through some of those experiences and ended up moving to the woods in Vermont and finding the wild weeds that I grew up with, the nettles, the burdock, and just actually spending a lot of time in the woods and nibbling on the pines and just being in nature, and nature healed me. And
Mm.
these plants that my grandmothers, would give me when I was a little girl just brought me back to the practice of nourishment. And so it was really finding my way back into this healing embrace of the earth, this understanding that medicine actually is meant to be available and accessible to all, that it shouldn't be guarded or only available to a select few, but that the earth is giving us abundantly the plants that we most need, and they're free and they're everywhere. Plants like dandelion, chickweed, oat straw, nettles. These are plants that grow all over the world in every continent, have been used in pretty much every culture, and they're free and
Mm.
they're superfoods. And so that was kind of the beginning of my return to um, this understanding that nature is generous, and that wellness is available, and it's not through fancy mechanisms. It's through consistent nourishment,
Mm.
grounding, and intimate relationship with the earth and ourselves.
Wow, there's so many things I want to dig into there. And one thing that really stood out to me is like your grandmas gave that to you. Like talk
Yeah.
about wise woman tradition, how beautiful that is, and how thinking about my relationship with my own grandma, who is no longer in her body, but was the one who taught us how to can, taught us how to cook in her garden until she was in her 90s, would
Mm,
have never identified, as a wise woman or an herbalist, and was a granddaughter of immigrants too. But like just what I got from her and her relationship with the earth, she didn't waste a thing. She
yeah.
never wasted a thing. Every cottage cheese, you know, t- whatever we call it, like tub of cottage cheese was recycled, and that thing was in her bottom drawer, and we were putting the extra pasta in it, and it was being taken home, after every meal. Like
Yes.
nothing was thrown away. And and so I think it's this perspective is so your perspective and the way you teach, and one of the reasons I respect it so much is because you're not focused on necessarily the problem, which is the result of, if we say, a health issue arising in the body is the problem. It's a result of a myriad of challenges, often social, cultural, environmental. Your focus is on nourishment and relationship.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, like, it's this at the deepest root of our health is our nervous system, essentially our feeling of safety and belonging in the world. And
Yes.
so you teaching people how to be in relationship with nature is essentially like helping to heal, ground the nervous system, which is the source of the deepest healing. So I really, I love that that's where you teach from. And I know so many women who have gone through your courses and are in them still, 6, 7 years later, they're like lifelong students. And it's a testament to what you teach.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
love that you spoke about the nervous system, because
Mm,
it absolutely all comes down to the nervous system. And I
yeah.
feel like a lot of the disease that we experience in our bodies, in our minds, in our culture, and in society, and in our relationship to the earth, um, comes from this panic that people have that, like, there isn't enough.
Yeah.
And that's the lie of capitalism. That's the lie and the kind of seductive hypnosis of
Mm,
extractive culture.
mhm.
And so that puts people into a frenzy. And from that place of like, I don't belong, there isn't enough, they react. They don't
Yeah.
respond to life. They react unconsciously. And, and all these things of like overconsumption or addiction can really kind of play out from that core nervous system feeling of I am not safe, I do not belong, there is not enough.
Yeah.
And when we actually create intimate personal relationship with the earth and with our bodies, when we learn to co-regulate our nervous system with nature, we're like, wait a second, like I don't need that much, like
Yeah.
I can come home to myself and I can create safety in my body. And when I create safety in myself, I'm a safe person for others, for my family, for my
Mm.
kids, for my partner, for my colleagues. And I'm a safe person for the earth.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you have the capacity to care. You have the capacity to feel and to care for other, not just self-interest, which I
yeah,
think what happens in that frenzy you're talking about. There's so one of the things, and I haven't personally taken your courses, but I've been a witness to your teachings over the years. And one of the things that really inspires me is your focus on relationship with plants individually, understanding them as a being that is a sovereign, unique individual, just as if you were meeting a person that you loved, just as if you were relating to um, a deity that you adore and have relationship with. And it's so counter, like I'm a huge fan of functional medicine. I'm a huge fan of alternative medicines, but it's counter even to the way that, you know, we're formulaic about things, right? We extract and we take this like one tiny fraction of the plant that we think is the most powerful because we've done studies on it. And then you're getting like, you know, 10,000% more of that than you need a day. And you're taking like 30 different pills and they're all extracts. And again,
yeah,
there's this separation between relationship between me and the source where this grows, where it comes from, what it actually is, right? In
yeah,
its full form. And that's something that we've done so well at Foria is this focus on whole plant extracts, which are featured in all of our formulas. And I would love for you to talk about how you teach that with your students. I know that you have them sit with particular medicine for quite a long time to get to know it, but I'd love for you to share more about why you do that and how people can learn that way.
yeah. I'd love to talk about how I teach that. I'd also love to talk more about why whole plant
Yes.
extracts are
Yes.
better.
Take it away.
Yeah. So the way that I teach this intimate embodied connection, in a way, sometimes I call it like tantric herbalism. And that's because um, we're through guided plant meditations, students are drinking herbs one at a time, and they're really learning the language of the plants through their bodies. So it's by slowing down, by opening our senses, and by really tuning into the energetics of plants that we begin to identify their unique language. And that can seem like kind of abstract, but all of us have an understanding of this. It's like when you make ginger tea, you feel sensation and it kind of is awakening, and it kind of the energy rises and it expands out, like your pores open,
Yeah.
circulation starts to move, there's a heat. If you really drink ginger tea and you close your eyes and you meditate and you just let your body relax and you talk to the consciousness of the plant and you drink at a pace that's guided by your body and not just kind of like wanting to slam the ginger, you'll feel your body slowly opening, kind of, like a rose does, layer by layer, fascia releasing, nervous system calming. It's kind of like making love, really. And you'll become more in tune to these more subtle sensations. And you might notice like, oh, in addition to the heat that I felt in my mouth and that moved into like my heart and my throat, now I'm noticing it's like sinking into my belly and it's
Mhm.
warming my core. Ooh, now I'm noticing that like it kind of landed in my womb and is warming my womb. And wow, I'm actually feeling a little like sexy energy because ginger's an aphrodisiac. So it's like there's all these different things that each plant will show us when we really listen. And so this is the way that I teach is not by having me first tell you ginger's an aphrodisiac and an expectorant and da da da, but having people go directly to the plant, go directly
Mhm.
to the source and develop the language through their body. And it's really magnificent because over the course of the 10 months together, we work with different plants that are connected to the different energetics of the season. We go through all the systems of the body, all the chakras, and that language of the plants becomes something that people become fluent
Mm.
in, and their own intuition as well, because plants work on us physically, they work on us emotionally, they work on us spiritually and energetically.
Yeah.
And in these plant spirit meditations, we experience and notice the physical sensation, but we're also calling in the spirit of the plant as a conscious being, and asking for intimate, whatever's going to happen. And so sometimes that comes in as a certain visual or a message or a feeling or a memory, or something from our heart kind of emerges like a prayer or a longing. It's just different every time, but it's really remarkable. And the plants are our elders.
Yeah.
They've been around longer than we have on this planet. And so they hold memory and experience of adapting through huge climactic changes. They hold, they've evolved with cultures that have evolved and people that have tended them a certain way and songs that have been sung. And so
Mhm.
there's so much richness in that relationship. And when we work with the plants in this way that I teach, this plant spirit medicine way, um, we're tapping into this entire kind of ancestral river of relationship
Mm.
that goes beyond the laws of time and space.
It's
And
so
then
beautiful.
in terms of like the whole plant extract, which I so love that about Foria's formulations, and every formulation I create is always using whole plant medicine. And the reason that's important is because the phytochemistry of plants is actually really complex.
Yeah.
And it's something that phytochemists don't understand. So, there are all these plants that scientists will be like, oh my God, this is the compound. This is like the medicinal alkaloid. So we'll extract it now. And then it will do that thing that we know it's causing, that it's doing in the plant. And as soon as they extract it, it doesn't work that way
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
And so plants, like there is a wholeness, there's this symphony, and they're really like the wholeness of their bodies are more bioavailable to the wholeness of our bodies.
Mm.
And so while there might be some compounds that are quote unquote, the active constituents of a plant, there are other compounds that might buffer like some negative side effect, or might tone and nourish an organ so that that compound is more absorbable. There's just a whole myriad of things that are happening. And when we when we use whole plant extractions, we're getting all of that nourishment. Really just all of the plant medicine. We're not, thinking that we know better than the plant itself.
Yeah. Who are we thinking we know better when there's literally like hundreds, if not thousands, of these compounds working together in our own bodies, which we don't even understand all the way. Like, who
Yeah.
are we to think that like we found this? It's just such a reflection of this like, pervasive type of extractive culture that uh, we're all currently living in.
Yeah.
Um, there's a piece around this that reminds me, it's one of the reasons we've never worked with isolate, particularly with CBD. And so many companies do, right? They take the CBD, which is the quote unquote active constituent. And yet studies have shown again and again and again that when you have whole plant extract, which means there's all of these other trace cannabinoids and co-cannabinoids and hundreds of them, even if they're in the smallest amounts, these little homeopathic doses, the CBD itself works so much more effectively. And probably all of the other plants work so much more effectively. So I think it's such an important point. And I wanted to also dive into, you work with plants that aren't necessarily exotic or rare. I mean, you work with those too, but you, from what I can see, you go to plants that people already have relationships with or are maybe can be found in their backyard or nearby. It's not, this rare little fungus on the top of Mount Everest that only a few people can reach. It's working with things in your kitchen, in your garden, plants that like nettle that grow so quickly and so easily in many environments. And I would love to hear maybe a few of your favorite plants in that context, and also why you teach about those plants versus these, quote unquote, more exotic rare plants.
Yeah, I love this question. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of bioregional herbalism, and there are many reasons for that. One of them is that the plants that are growing around us are experiencing the same stimulus and the same challenges of the environment that we are. And they are using their, thousand, sometimes million-year old um, capacities to respond to that. And so when we work with plants that grow in the same environment that we live in, we're plugging into this incredible matrix of resilience and nourishment and adaptability. And often, people will say that the plants that you most need will start to grow around you, and plants will pop up in your yard that, maybe like dandelion starts growing, and maybe your liver actually really needs support. There's so much that is actually unquantifiable and is mysterious and magical because we are the earth and we are in relationship to the earth. And so working with local plants tends to actually be more supportive, more nutritive, more effective, and can really address some of the deep core needs that we have. Then there's this environmental component where, again, because of this like false belief that something out there on the other side of the fence is better, we are devastating the earth and her resources. And we have so many examples of, Western people who like suddenly became obsessed with maca or with quinoa. And they're like, this is the huge superfood. We need it. And then this many thousand-year old bond and cultural tradition of quinoa in South America gets severed because we go in and we want all the quinoa. And now people who grew up eating quinoa for generations and generations can't afford their grain, their
Yeah.
staple. And so, when we look outside of ourselves in general, and then when we look to these plants, it's important that we really check ourselves and see like, where is this coming from? And it comes usually from an insecurity and a false belief that something out there is better, or that we can be fixed by something that isn't already around us or within us. And this is just a huge falsity. And there are devastating environmental and spiritual repercussions to this falsity. And it's just completely unsustainable. And, there are plants that have become extinct because people suddenly are obsessed with one plant, and it becomes fashionable, and people think that this one plant is the cure all. Whereas in reality, the plants around us, we all, no matter where we live, we have medicine growing outside of our door. And so focusing on those plants connects us more to where we live. It connects us to ourselves, and it heals that part of us that has become tricked by capitalism and by patriarchy to believe that we are not enough and that we
Mhm.
need something outside of us to fix us.
Mm. So important to remember. Okay, I want to switch gears and talk about Awaken.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, you were the original formulator. You birthed this into life with us. And there's such a beautiful array of plants in that formula. And we have two versions of it now, obviously, one with CBD and one without CBD. Um, but I'd love for you to talk about maybe 4 of the plants in that formula, the ones that you feel like really, and I know they all work together really well, but just let's talk about vanilla, let's talk about ginger, let's talk about cacao, and let's talk about kava.
Great. Those would have been my choices
Great.
too.
Okay, perfect.
Well, we have to start with kava because kava gave me that formula.
Mm,
So the spirit of kava, which is an incredible, beautiful ancestral root native to the Polynesian Islands, also cultivated in Hawaii, um, is this beautiful plant. It has heart-shaped leaves and it has these stems that have these like knuckles. And so there's something we call the doctrine of signatures, which is that plants communicate about their medicinal properties in all sorts of ways, including the way that they grow, where they grow, what they look like. And those heart-shaped leaves clue us into what a heart opener kava is. And that's been one of its greatest gifts. It's a plant that's been used for thousands of years by the Polynesian people to calm the nervous system, ground the body, and really drop into the heart. And ancestrally, traditionally, and I believe to this day, um, decisions weren't made that affected a culture and a society until everyone sat in a circle and drank kava. And I think about that so much. Like, what kind of a culture would we live in if our leaders were required to drop into their hearts,
mm,
calm their minds, set their ego aside, and all enter the same
mm,
hum vibration of the earth, and make decisions that would impact everybody from that place. And so kava's just, I mean, I could talk about kava for hours. So I'll wrap it up by saying that kava has a phenomenal effect on the nervous system. It calms anxiety. It grounds us in our body. It also relaxes tension from the body. So it's an antispasmodic. It's an amazing medicinal herb to work with if you have like bad cramps or if you got in a car accident and there's trauma in the body and like shock, because it creates safety in the nervous system and in the body, and it kind of just like melts tension away. It's also a plant that I really recommend to people who want to get off of other addictive substances like marijuana, smoking weed, or drinking alcohol. And a lot of people will like finish their day by having a glass of wine or a cocktail or a joint. And not only is that kind of calming their nervous system, but it's also relaxing their body. And it's that kind of, the like shake off the day thing that really is nourishing to people. And so kava does that. Kava gives you a whole body relaxation release. And so it can be a really supportive herb for that kind of effect that people often desire at the end of their day. It's a heart opener, it's a heart tonic. It increases circulation. It's a strong anti-inflammatory, and it's an aphrodisiac. So aphrodisiacs, what they do in the body is they increase circulation and blood flow. So there's more blood flow going to the genitals as well as everywhere else. And circulation is like the key to physical healing. We need to increase circulation in order for our body to repair itself. Aphrodisiacs also calm the nervous system. So we get more into the body and into the senses and out of the like beta brain waves of like, and then I gotta get the laundry, and then I gotta get the kids, and then the like active, talkative mind. They bring us into our body, bring us into a relaxed state of consciousness. They also increase like open our senses. So smell, sight, textures, touch become more palpable. And yeah, that's essentially what they do. And so kava does all of those things, as does vanilla, as does cacao, as does ginger, the plants that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Um, and it was really through my deep love affair and devotion to this plant, sitting with kava many, many times in meditation and making offerings to this plant and really listening to her and learning directly from her, that I learned a lot about how to work with this plant. And she told me in a plant meditation once, you should put some of me on your yoni, like Put this on
Wow.
the labia, put this, and it's interesting because when you drink kava kava, and it's traditionally drunk as like a cold infusion tea, sometimes with cacao fat blended in. Not cacao, I'm sorry, coconut. When you drink it, there's this like numbing sensation in your
Mm-hmm.
mouth. So it's like you kind of feel this like tingle on your tongue and in your cheeks. Sometimes people are like, "Oh no, am I having an allergic reaction?"
Yeah.
Oh, you're not.
Yeah.
This is part of its medicine, but it makes this tingling in the mucous membranes and then almost like this numbing. So it's actually an anti-pain medicine as well. So it's interesting because you wouldn't think you would want something that would take away sensation, but it doesn't on the labia. And in the genitals, it responds topically to the mucous membranes, creates a little bit of this like hum,
Mm-hmm. That's
this,
a really nice way to say it. Yeah.
yeah, this little like, yeah, it's as if you're like humming right next to the tissue, like a little awakening, such a great name for the
Yeah.
formula. A little buzzing, a little warmth, a little more sensation, really safe. Not, and it just kind of builds. Like that's like the base note of the formula.
Yeah. Totally.
That's the main kind of plant, you know, hero of the formula.
I
And
love
then
it.
she's complemented by cacao, which is also like another kind of grounding base note that, we all, I mean, gosh, I think all of us love chocolate and know that like we reach for cacao when we're feeling sad or emotional or anxious or
Totally.
stressed. And like the amount of endorphins and the relaxation, it's cacao relaxes us,
Mm-hmm.
opens the heart, and doesn't sedate us, right? There's like this incredible experience of feeling very present, mentally aware. Your senses are activated. You have energy and stamina if you wanted to make love, but you're relaxed and you feel
Yeah.
safe and you feel emotionally held.
Yeah.
And then the vanilla also has that. Vanilla is a supreme aphrodisiac. It's actually an amazing anti-pain medicine as
Wow.
well.
Wow.
I know this formula has been really loved by people who used to have a lot of pain when they had sex. And I know that over the years they've written in and been like, this is the first time I've had pain-free sex. And the
Wow.
vanilla would be helpful for that, responsible for that. Same with the kava. Um, and then vanilla is another aphrodisiac that, opens the heart, opens the senses, softens the body, brings us into a state of relaxation and pleasure. And the last plant that you mentioned is ginger, and ginger is just in the smallest amounts, very
Tiny
small
little
amount.
bits. Yeah.
Yeah, but ginger is amazing at increasing circulation, and it brings blood to the surface of tissue. And so by putting Awaken on your genitals, on your tissue, the ginger is like it's almost like calling forth blood to the surface of the tissue, and that increases sensation.
Mm.
And there's a little bit of mint in there too. So the ginger is a little heating, the mint is a tiny bit cooling, and these are very subtle presences. This isn't like, it's all made to be really um yeah, beautiful and not like shocking, right?
Yeah.
But those two together have this beautiful dance that also creates excitement and sensation and like an awakening experience.
I love it so much. And the formula is so well respected. It's like, I think the probably OG female arousal formula in the sexual wellness space at this point, like it's the one that started arousal formulas. And people just, as soon as they use it, they come back and they're like, wow, this really, really changed things for me. Whether that's with pleasure and, the orgasmic experience, the orgasmic capacity that they're having, or on the other end, comfort, and on the other end, libido. And I think it's so fascinating that a single formula, which again, it's a formula, but it's not a single plant, right? There's multiple plants with multiple actions inside of Awaken. that are working on pleasure and arousal, that are working on comfort, and that are working also on desire and libido and
Yes.
helping to wake it up. And so it's it's use cases for so many different people's experiences, just kind of like hits the mark in so many of these different ways. And we love it. It's still our bestseller, and we hope it always will be. It's so special.
It's a magical formula, and it's great
Yeah.
to give credit to the plants because it
Yeah.
really came from the spirit of Kava Kava,
Mm,
and that's the generosity of the earth. You know,
yeah.
she's like, listen, sit at my feet,
Yeah.
and I will give you everything, as I always have and as I always do.
I love that. I love that so much. Well, I'm so glad we got to have this combo. And I would love if you have anything special coming up where people can learn from you or join you, or ways they can study from you, if you would share that with us.
Yeah, I have a 10-month long apprenticeship that begins every September, and we open registration every June. So folks can go onto my website, schoolofthesacredwild.com, and can sign up for the mailing list if they want to find out when registration opens again next June. And then I have a couple in-person retreats at Esalen Institute. The one in October is sold out, but they're about to open a new retreat um, mid-March. That will be like a tantric herbalism magical retreat, and I'll be teaching at Omega Institute on the East Coast. I believe next August, if I'm remembering correctly. So getting on my mailing list is
Sounds
probably the best
amazing.
way
Amazing.
to find out, and folks can also follow me on Instagram. And I have a book that guides people through the seasons of the year, giving rituals and recipes. There's some amazing kava elixirs in that book as well. And that book is called The Witch's Herbal Apothecary, and it's available on my website and on Amazon and all those places.
Amazing. That retreat sounds phenomenal. And
Yeah.
just want to thank you so much for joining us here today, and thank everyone who came to listen, who came to, absorb all of your incredible wisdom. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Kiana, and many
Mhm.
blessings to everyone.